Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Virtual University. In earlier lessons, we've been exploring ways of writing more effective sentences. In the last lesson, we did sentence errors. And in today's lesson, we will continue to look at sentence errors and look at ways of revising or correcting these errors. In the last lesson, if you remember, we looked at the most common type of sentence error, which was the sentence fragment. Today we shall examine the next two most common types of sentence errors, which are the run-on sentence and the dangling modifier. First, we will look at run-on sentences. A run-on sentence, as the word run-on tells you, is a sentence that is made up of two complete thoughts that have no clear break between them. There are two kinds of run-on sentences: fused sentences and comma-spliced sentences. Now, the first one, the fused sentence. When two or more sentences that run together with no mark of punctuation between them, they are said to be fused. The two sentences or two complete statements or two complete thoughts are simply stuck together into one sentence. The writer of such a sentence is either extremely careless or is ignorant of the most elementary facts about sentence structure. Now, I shall read out a few examples, and you yourself will notice what I meant by saying that they are fused sentences. Example: computer skills are useful in college. They will help you in getting a job as well. The second example: our club raised money for the Red Crescent. An organization like this is a wonderful thing. The third example: he left early. He said he had a toothache. Now, a good way to prevent fused sentences is to read aloud what you have written. There is another hint. You should look within the sentence for words like I, you, he, she, it, we, they, there, this, that, now, then, and next. Now, all these words that I have just read aloud, they are words that signal the beginning of a complete thought. The second type of sentence error results from an attempt to use a comma to join two complete thoughts. In other words, two complete thoughts are incorrectly joined or spliced together with only a comma. Example, I'll give you three examples. The first example, listen to this sentence: Saad is always nervous about tests, comma, his grades are usually the best in the class. That is an example of a comma splice, a sentence that is a comma splice. Number two, she saved money by stitching her own clothes. Moreover, she enjoyed designing them. Number three, four of us were in the taxi. I was looking out the rear window when the cyclist whizzed past us. Now, we will quickly go through an exercise which is a practice exercise, so that you learn to recognize fused sentences and comma splice sentences. You look at the sentence and mark the place between the two complete thoughts with a slash. Look at the sentence and you will notice that each sentence is made up of two complete thoughts, where one thought ends and the second thought begins. Just mark the place. You can mark it with a slash, or with a bracket, or with a dash, and then say what type of sentence it is. Is it a sentence that is fused, or is it a sentence that is a comma splice? Use the letter F for fused and the initial CS for comma splice. The first two sentences, I'll give you examples, and these sentences have been done for you. Example, the room is locked, no one has a key. Notice that there are two complete thoughts. The first is, the room is locked. The second thought is, no one has a key. Right? And you know where to put the mark. The mark is between the word locked and the word no. And it is a fused sentence. The second example, the wall is covered with ivy, a stone path leads to the wall. And you notice there's a comma over there. And it is an example of a comma splice sentence. Now the next 5 sentences have not been done for you. Look at the sentences and just identify the place where the first thought and the second thought, the first thought ends and the second thought begins. The first one, Raheel likes to cook. His wife taught him how. Now that is, what kind of a sentence is it? Is it a run-on sentence, or is it a comma splice sentence? If you look carefully, it's a run-on sentence. Raheel likes to cook, his wife taught him how. The second sentence, the bell rang, the wrestlers returned to the ring. If you notice carefully, two complete thoughts. The bell rang, one thought. The other one, the wrestlers returned to the ring. And that is an example of a comma splice. Sentence number 3. The trunk is in the basement. It has a handle missing. The first thought is, the first complete thought is, the trunk is in the basement. And you should put the mark after the word basement. That sentence is an example of a comma splice. Sentence number 4. The waiters served soft drinks to the children. They offered coffee to the adults. That is a run-on sentence. And the break is between the words children and they. The first complete thought is, the waiters served soft drinks to the children. They offered coffee to the adults is the second complete thought. And they've been just put together without any mark, punctuation mark. Sentence number 5. It rained during our trip to Murray. We played cards and told stories. That sentence, again, is an example of a comma splice. Now, how would you correct sentences that are fused? There are 3 ways of correcting a fused sentence. The first rule is that you divide the fused sentence into 2 sentences. Divide the one sentence that you have and you think it's a fused sentence. The best thing is divide it into 2. Example, the lake is calm today. It looks like a blue mirror. Now that is a fused sentence. You can use the first rule, divide it into 2. Make 2 sentences out of that one sentence. The lake is calm today. Full stop. That is one complete thought. The second sentence is, it looks like a blue mirror. This is a very common error with students. They just forget to put the punctuation mark. That was the first rule. The second rule is that you put a comma and an appropriate joining word between the two complete thoughts. Rule number 2 is that you put a comma and an appropriate joining word between the two complete thoughts or sentences. And these joining words are words like and, but, or so. Rule number 2 is that you put a comma between the two complete thoughts and you put an appropriate joining word between the two thoughts. Example, and you had this before, computer skills are useful in college, they will help you in getting a job as well. Now that is not a good sentence, and you can correct it by breaking it into two. Use a comma and a joining word. So you write computer skills are useful in college, comma, and they will help you in getting a good job as well, right? So you used the joining word and. Take another example. Yuhanna, and you know who I'm referring to, Yusuf Yuhanna, the Pakistan's ace batsman. Yuhanna has a pulled muscle. He won't play any cricket this season, God forbid. Yuhanna has a pulled muscle. He won't play any cricket this season. Now that is not a well-constructed sentence. You can use rule number 2. Put a comma between the two complete thoughts and use an appropriate joining word. You can construct this sentence in this way. Yuhanna has a pulled muscle, comma, so he won't play any cricket this season. Right? Now, you've learned 2 rules. The third rule is that you use a subordination clause to make one of the complete thoughts dependent on the other one. Now, to subordinate a complete thought, you change it from a statement that can stand alone to one that cannot stand by itself. And to do such a thing, you begin the thought with a complete, the thought with an appropriate word. You can convert a statement into a subordinate statement by using one of the words that I'm going to read out for you. And these words are because, when, if, before, since, until, unless, while, as, though, and after. For example, if you had this sentence, it's a badly constructed sentence. Yuhanna has a pulled muscle, he won't do any batting this tournament. Now you can convert the first complete part, Yuhanna has a pulled muscle. You can convert this into a subordinate clause by adding one of the words that I have just read out to you. You can use the word because and write because Yuhanna has a pulled muscle, comma, he won't do any batting in this tournament. Now, you must make a note that you put a comma at the end of a dependent word group, right? You have to put a comma at the end of a dependent word group or a subordinate clause that begins a sentence. Now, we'll have another short practice. You have a number of fused sentences that follow a number of fused sentences which use one of the methods that I have just described to you. Now, you correct each of these sentences using one of the methods that I have described to you. I described 3 methods for you, and you use one method. Use a different method for each sentence. Take the first sentence. It wasn't his idea, he should have known better than to do it. It wasn't his idea, he should have known better than to do it. So, how can you correct this sentence? Use one of the methods that I have just described to you. You can do it by breaking it into 2 complete thoughts. It wasn't his idea, full stop. And the other one, the other part, you can begin with the word he. He should have known better than to do it. Number 2. It's easy to begin smoking, it's much harder to quit. Now notice, that's a fused sentence. One thought runs into the other. And you can improve this sentence by using one of the 3 methods that I have just pointed out to you. You can say, it's easy to begin smoking, comma, but it's much harder to quit. And you used the appropriate word the appropriate joining word but. But is appropriate over here. You can't use and, you can't use so, because it contrasts what you've said earlier. The first part is, it's easy to begin smoking, but it's much harder to quit. That is a better sentence, a better construction. Sentence number 3. Some workers at the factory have been laid off, the others are nervous. 2 thoughts running one into the other. Now over here, the best way is to convert one of the independent statements into a subordinate one. Take the first statement and convert it into a subordinate clause or subordinate statement or a subordinate thought by using the word because. Because some workers at the factory have been laid off, comma, the others are nervous. Remember to put a comma after off. Because some workers of the factory have been laid off. Now if you look carefully, you have just added the word because and you've made the first statement a subordinate statement, right? Because some workers at the factory have been laid off, comma, the others are nervous. Sentence number 4. The room looked wonderful. The carpets had just been vacuumed. The room looked wonderful. The carpets had just been vacuumed. And the best way is to break this sentence into 2 independent sentences. Your thoughts will be very clear. The first part, the room looked wonderful, full stop. The carpets had just been vacuumed, right? Make it into another sentence. Sentence number 5. The fish was served with its head still on. I lost my appetite. Now what do you do in such a situation? You convert the first statement, the first complete thought, into a subordinate statement, and you use the word because. Because the fish was served with its head still on, comma, I lost my appetite. Sentence number 6. First you should clean the floor, then you should vacuum the carpet. To you it might look a correct sentence, but it isn't. Use one of the rules. And the rule that you can apply over here is that you use a joining word. First you should clean the floor, comma, and then you should vacuum the carpet. Use the word, the joining word and. Right? Now we'll look at ways of correcting comma splice sentences. The practice that you had earlier was with fused sentences. Now the second type of common mistake is writing sentences that are known as comma splice sentences. How do you correct a comma splice sentence? A comma splice can be connected by using one of the same 3 methods suggested for correcting a fused sentence. The 3 methods, the 3 rules that you learnt for correcting a run-on or a fused sentence can be applied for correcting a comma splice sentence. The same 3 rules apply. Rule number 1, divide the comma splice into 2 sentences. Example, Saad is always nervous about tests. His grades are usually the best in the class. Now the best way is that divide this into 2 sentences. The first complete thought, put a full stop at the end of it and begin the next sentence with a capital letter, and you've got 2 complete sentences. Saad is always nervous about tests, full stop. Second part, his grades are usually the best in the class. That was the first rule. Rule number 2, connect the 2 complete thoughts by placing a joining word after the comma. And the joining words are and, but, and so. Example, Saad is always nervous about tests, comma, that is one thought. Use a joining word, and the joining word that would be appropriate over here would be but. Saad is always nervous about his tests, comma, but his grades are usually the best in the class. Right? Now, number 3, the third rule, the rule of using subordination, where you add a dependent word to one of the complete thoughts. The same sentence, the same example. Take this one. Saad is always nervous about tests, although his grades are usually the best in the class. Now over here you did not put a comma, you did not use a comma. You converted the second independent statement. You converted the independent statement into a dependent statement by using the word although, right? And you joined them together. Saad is always nervous about tests, although his grades are usually the best in the class. Right? Now we will have another practice. And over here, you will correct each of the comma splices sentences using one of the methods that have been suggested. And remember, use a different method for each sentence. Now I hope that by the end of the lesson you will have had enough practice so that when it comes to actually writing, you will not make such mistakes. Take the first sentence. Fahad was talking on the phone. He was switching TV channels with his remote control at the same time. Now that is an example of a sentence that is a comma splice. The writer has used a comma to splice the two sentences, and he has joined them incorrectly. You joined them correctly. Apply the first rule. Fahad was talking on the phone, comma, and he was switching TV channels with his remote control at the same time. And you have used the joining word and made it into a better sentence. Sentence number 2. Mules are very sure-footed. They are used for climbing steep mountains. You know what mules are? Well, you know what a horse is and what a donkey is. And mules are, they are, like horses and like donkeys. They do all the hard work. Mules are very sure-footed. They are used for climbing steep mountains. Use a different rule this time and make this sentence into a better sentence. Mules are very sure-footed, comma, so they are used for climbing steep mountains. Right? Let us look at sentence number 3. The electricity at the shopping center went out. All the shops had to close early. Now, how would you correct this sentence? Use the third rule, which was to make one of the independent thoughts subordinate. You can use the word since. Since the electricity at the shopping center went out, comma, all the shops had to close early. Number 4. Bicycles are the world's best method of transportation. They don't pollute the atmosphere. Quite right. So, how would you correct this one? Again, I would suggest that you use rule number 3. Subordinate the second part of the sentence. Bicycles are the world's best method of transportation because they don't pollute the atmosphere. Look at the last sentence. I don't like the principal's way of expressing herself. I agree with many of her ideas. And the writer has used a comma and joined two thoughts together, joined them incorrectly. And this can be corrected by following the third rule. Make the first half of this sentence subordinate by using the word although. Although I don't like the principal's way of expressing herself, comma, I agree with many of her ideas. Now we will review fused and comma splice constructions, and you fill in the missing word in each space. Look at the first sentence. Is made up of two complete thoughts that are incorrectly joined together with nothing between them. What would you use over there? What word would you use over there to complete the sentence? A run-on is made up of two complete thoughts that are incorrectly joined together with nothing between them. Number 2, a space dash is made up of two complete thoughts that are incorrectly joined together with only a comma between them. and the hint is given you over there. What would you use to fill the blank? A comma splice is made up of two complete thoughts that are incorrectly joined together with only a comma between them. And the third one way to correct fused sentences and comma splices is to add and a capital letter. There is a hint for you. Capital letter. Where and when do you use a capital letter? So you will fill the blank with the word, add a full stop, or if you don't use the word full stop, the other word is period. So you can complete that sentence by writing, one way to correct fused sentences and comma splices is to add a full stop, oblique, period, and a capital letter. And the fourth one, two complete thoughts can be joined together in a sentence by a comma and a blank word such as and, but, or so. And if you are careful, and if you look carefully, the hint is given you. And, but, so. What kind of words are those? They are joining words. So you will complete that sentence by using the word joining. Two complete thoughts can be joined together in a sentence by a comma and a joining word such as and, but, or so. Number 5. Two complete thoughts can be joined together in one sentence by adding a, and there's the blank, a word such as when or because. Now, what are words like when, because, although? What kind of words are they? They are dependent words. So you can say that two complete thoughts can be joined together in one sentence by adding a dependent word such as when or because. And number 6, the fused sentence and the comma splice are also known as blank sentences. And what word would you use over there? And the word that you can use to fill the blank is run-on. The fused sentence and the comma splice are also known as run-on sentences. Now, I have gone over the lesson with you. You've had practice in recognizing fused and comma splice sentences. Now let us test if you have understood today's lesson. There are a couple of sentences, and you rewrite them using the methods that you have learnt today. The first sentence: a plane flew very low overhead, comma, the houses rattled loudly. A plane flew very low overhead, comma, the houses rattled loudly. Correct that sentence, rewrite it. Use one of the methods that you have learnt. Very simple. I hope you used the joining word. A plane flew very low overhead, comma, and the houses rattled loudly. Number 2, garlic may smell bad, it tastes delicious. It has other good qualities as well. Garlic can help lower cholesterol. It is also supposed to keep away disease. Now notice in that sentence, it is not a single sentence. It's made up of 2, 3 sentences. Look at that sentence again. 1, 2, 3 sentences. And you correct it. Make it into 3 sentences. It should be constructed in the way that you have learnt. Use the method or methods that you have learnt in today's lesson. Garlic may smell, comma, but it tastes delicious. That's sentence number 1. It has other good qualities as well, full stop. There is no need to change anything over there. Take the next one. Garlic can help lower cholesterol, comma, and it is also supposed to keep away disease. Now if you look back at the given sentence, notice the first part, garlic may smell bad, it tastes delicious. That is the part that needs improvement. Garlic may smell bad, but it tastes delicious. The second one is correct. It has other good qualities as well. There is no need to change anything. Look at the last part. Garlic can help lower cholesterol, and it is also supposed to keep away disease. Look at the third example. Read it carefully. It's composed of 1, 2, 3 sentences, fairly long sentences. You must have noticed that the first was 1 sentence. Now we are moving into longer passages. Students find it easy to correct single sentences, but when they come to longer passages of 3 or 4 sentences, they get stuck. And this is practice for you. My psychology final exam is next week, comma, I am very worried about passing it, full stop. Because I was sick at the start of the term, comma, I never completed the prescribed reading, full stop. For the past month I've been working in the evening, comma, it's hard to find time to study, comma, I will ask the teacher for extra help, it may be too late. Now notice that the sentence is not clear. One thought runs into the other. They just merge, and the reader has difficulty in following the train of thought. Use the methods that you have learned to correct it. You can correct it in this way. My psychology final exam is next week, full stop. That is 1 complete sentence. I am very worried about passing it. You broke that sentence into 2. And you started sentence number 2 with the capital I. I am very worried about passing it. Full stop. Sentence number 2, the second part is correct. Because I was sick at the start of the term, I never completed. You don't have to make any changes over there. And it's the next one, the next part. For the past month I've been working in the evening, comma, so it's hard to find time to study. use the word so. And in the last one, convert it into a dependent clause. Use the word although. Although I will ask the teacher for extra help, comma, it may be too late. Now, we have looked at fused sentences and comma spliced sentences. These are very common errors in writing. We will look at another type of sentence error, and that is known as the dangling or the misplaced modifier. Now, what is a modifier? A modifier is one or more words that describe another word or group of words. And in the following examples, the modifier you will find is in bold letters, is in bold type, and the word that is being modified is underlined. The woman with gold-rimmed spectacles is my boss. The phrase with gold-rimmed spectacles is the modifier. It is modifying or describing or telling you something more about woman. The word woman is being modified, right? The word woman is modified by the phrase with gold spectacles, right? Number 2, my neighbor has a spaniel with one ear missing. A spaniel is a dog. My neighbor has a spaniel with one ear missing. Now, the with one ear missing is the modifier. What is it modifying? What is it describing? Is it describing the neighbor or the spaniel? And it is the word spaniel. The spaniel has one ear missing, right? Number 3, I have nearly 1,000 stamps. I have nearly 1,000 stamps. And the word nearly is modified by the phrase 1,000. Now, I hope you've understood what a modifier is. Now, we are going to talk about a misplaced modifier, a modifier that is incorrectly separated from the word or words that it describes. And this is a very common mistake. Students, when they are writing, they put the modifier away from the word it is modifying. The misplaced modifier seems to describe words that the writer did not intend it to describe. When modifiers are misplaced, the reader may misunderstand the sentence. Look at this example. My brother bought a used car from a local dealer with a leaking pipe. Another example, the sparrow built a nest at the back of our house of grass and twigs. Number 3, Anjum Nisar almost sneezed 20 times last night. Now, in all these examples, the modifier is placed in the wrong position. Generally, the solution is to place the modifier as close as possible to the word or words it describes. Now, in the first sentence, the modifier with a leaking pipe is misplaced. It unintentionally conveys the meaning that the local car dealer has a leaking pipe. Now, it's not the car dealer that has a leaking pipe, but it's the car, not the dealer. It gives a totally different meaning to the sentence. Now, to avoid such a meaning, place the modifier next to the word that it is describing. Example, look at that example again. In that example, it is the word car. So the phrase with a leaking pipe should be placed next to the word car. And in the second sentence, the words of grass and twigs are misplaced because they are near the word house. One would think that it was our house that was made of grass and twigs, while actually it is the nest that was made of grass and twigs. The reader must think that the house is made of grass. Now, to avoid this meaning, place the modifier next to the word that it describes, that is the word nest. Look at sentence number 3. Because the word almost is misplaced, the readers might think Anjum almost sneezed 20 times, but in fact he didn't sneeze at all, and that is not what is intended. To prevent this confusion, put almost in front of the word 15 or 20, the word that it is modifying. Now look at the corrected versions of these sentences. My brother bought a used car with a leaking pipe from a local dealer. The sparrow built a nest of grass and twigs at the back of our house. And the third one, Anjum Nisar sneezed almost 20 times last night. Now, we'll have another practice where you identify the misplaced words and you rewrite these sentences, placing the modifier where it will make the meaning clear. Number 1, I am returning the jacket to the store that is too small. Now that sentence conveys the idea that it is the store that is too small. So you rewrite this sentence by putting the modifier next to the word jacket. Sentence number 2, the couple looked at 30 sofas shopping on Saturday. That sentence conveys the idea that it was the sofas that was shopping. So correct it by writing shopping on Saturday. The couple looked at 30 sofas. Same, number 3, the woman tore open the parcel she had just received with her fingernails. Now, correct that. The woman tore with her fingernails the parcel she had received. Number 4, the bracelet on Aisha's arm made of silver belongs to her mother. It means the sentence conveys the idea that it is Aisha's arm that is made of silver. That it is actually the bracelet that is made of silver. The bracelet made of silver on Aisha's arm belongs to her mother. And number 5, take this jar to Uncle Aman's home, which he lent to me. Take this jar which Uncle Aman lent to me to his home, to his house. You looked at misplaced modifiers. Now we are going to look at dangling modifiers. Look at this example. Staring dreamily into space, the instructor's loud voice startled me. Now the modifier over here, staring dreamily into space, is followed by the instructor's loud voice, which gives the impression that the instructor's voice was staring into space. So here the modifier is dangling. So you can correct this by saying staring dreamily into space, comma, I was startled by the instructor's loud voice. Or you can write, as I was staring dreamily into space, the instructor's loud voice startled me. Now, you can correct a dangling modifier in 2 ways. Either you place the subject directly after the opening word group, staring dreamily into space, or you can add a subject and a verb to the opening word. Example, as I was staring dreamily into space. Now, in today's lesson, we looked at common errors that students make in writing sentences. And these were the fused, comma splice sentences, and the misplaced and the dangling modifier. I hope you will not fall into these bad habits. You will try to write good sentences. Allah Hafiz. See you next time.